On the morning of Saturday, April 24th, 1915, the great Cunard liner RMS Lusitania emerged from the mist off the coast of New York after another swift crossing of the Atlantic. At over 780 feet long and capable of nearly 25 knots, she was one of the most celebrated passenger ships in the world. As dawn broke, passengers gathered along the promenade decks wrapped in coats against the cool spring air. Ahead, the skyline of Manhattan slowly materialized through the haze. The towers of Lower Manhattan, church spires, and the unmistakable silhouette of the Statue of Liberty welcomed the ship into New York Harbor. For many aboard, it was a moment of relief and excitement. Businessmen prepared for meetings, immigrants anticipated reunions with family, and wealthy travelers looked forward to the city's finest hotels. Harbor pilots boarded first, climbing from a small pilot boat onto the massive liner, while she continued moving steadily through the water. Soon afterward, powerful tugboats surrounded the Lusitania, guiding her toward her berth at Pier 54 on the Hudson River. The Cunard Line's prestigious New York terminal, the arrival was anything but ordinary. Europe had been at war for nearly 9 months. Though the United States remained officially neutral, the conflict cast a long shadow over every transatlantic voyage. Newspapers crowded the docks, eager for reports from Britain and the continent. Cargo handlers waited alongside customs officials, chauffeurs, porters, and hundreds of family members hoping to glimpse loved ones as the gangways were lowered. The Lusitania completed her arrival with remarkable efficiency. First-class passengers descended elegant staircases carrying leather trunks and hat boxes. Steerage passengers followed later through separate processing areas, beginning new lives in America. Beneath the ship's polished decks, thousands of tons of mail, luggage, and cargo were unloaded. Everything from machinery and textiles to personal parcels, destined for homes across the country. For 1 week, the Lusitania rested in New York. Her boilers were inspected. Fresh coal was loaded into her bunkers and supplies poured aboard. Mountains of food disappeared into refrigerated storerooms. Fresh meat, vegetables, fruit, flour, tea, and wine, enough to serve nearly 2,000 people during the return voyage. Engineers worked below deck while stewards prepared cabins with crisp linens and polished brass fittings. To the casual observer, it seemed like any other turnaround for one of the Atlantic's premier liners. Yet beyond the pier, the atmosphere had become increasingly tense. Germany had declared the waters around the British Isles a war zone, and German U-boats had begun attacking merchant shipping. Rumors circulated throughout New York that British ships might be targeted. Many dismissed the stories as wartime propaganda. Others quietly reconsidered their travel plans. Then came Saturday, May 1st, 1915. From early morning, Pier 54 buzzed with activity. Horse-drawn wagons and motor trucks delivered the last cargo. Elegant automobiles deposited first-class passengers beneath the terminal's covered entrance. Inside the terminal, something unusual caught the attention of travelers. In several New York newspapers that morning, directly beside Cunard's advertisement for the Lusitania's sailing, appeared a notice from the Imperial German Embassy. It warned that vessels flying the British flag entering the war zone were liable to destruction and advised travelers to sail at their own risk. Some passengers paused to read it carefully. A few canceled their reservations, others shrugged and boarded anyway. Trusting the prestige of the Lusitania and believing that no civilized nation would deliberately attack an ocean liner carrying civilians, the prevailing mood remained surprisingly confident. After all, the ship had completed dozens of Atlantic crossings without incident. By late morning, the passenger list numbered nearly 2,000 people. Among them were wealthy industrialists, artists, students, nurses, families with young children, and infants making their very first ocean voyage. Captain William Thomas Turner, an experienced Cunard master, supervised preparations from the bridge with quiet professionalism. Precisely 12:20 p.m., the great liner came alive. Deep within the hull, steam surged through her engines. A powerful blast from the ship's whistle echoed across Manhattan's waterfront, reverberating between warehouses and skyscrapers. Crowds lining the pier responded with cheers and waves. White handkerchiefs fluttered from the promenade decks as passengers leaned over the rails searching for familiar faces below. The mooring lines were cast off one by one. Tugboats eased the Lusitania away from Pier 54 with extraordinary precision. Slowly, Almost imperceptibly, the immense ship drifted into the Hudson River. Her 4 towering funnels stood against a brilliant blue spring sky, while sunlight glinted across hundreds of cabin windows. As she gathered way, smaller vessels saluted her passing. Ferries crossed the river, excursion boats slowed to watch, and harbor traffic parted before the Cunard giant. Along riverside piers and Battery Park, New Yorkers paused to admire one of the world's finest ships beginning another Atlantic crossing. The Lusitania steamed south along Manhattan, passing the busy docks of Chelsea and the bustling waterfront of Lower New York. Soon, she rounded the Battery, where the harbor opened before her. Off her port side stood the Statue of Liberty, its torch raised above the channel. Passengers crowded every open deck, cameras clicking as the monument slipped astern, a final farewell to America. Beyond Liberty Island lay the broad expanse of Upper New York Bay. The liner continued toward the Narrows, escorted for a time by tugboats before they turned back toward the city. One final whistle sounded across the water as the escort departed. Ahead stretched the Atlantic Ocean. Few aboard could have imagined that this routine departure would become one of history's most poignant maritime moments. The luxurious liner disappearing beyond the horizon looked every bit as magnificent as she had on countless previous voyages. New York returned to its ordinary rhythm, and the Lusitania headed east toward Liverpool. It was the last time she would ever leave the harbor. 6 days later, on May 7, 1915, off the southern coast of Ireland, the Lusitania was struck by a torpedo fired by the German submarine U-20. She sank in just 18 minutes, claiming the lives of 1,198 people. Her final departure from New York became forever remembered not as the beginning of another successful crossing, but as the opening chapter of one of the most significant maritime tragedies of the First World War.